Hello again and welcome back to part 3 of A Black and White Tale. Remember last time we met Brian's new friend Nell. And let's find out what they get up to next. In chapter 5, in which we learn how dangerous tunnels can be. In the days that followed, Brian found himself seeking out Nell whenever their work allowed. He was surprised that he had missed having her around the rest of the time and looked forward to seeing her, even if most of the time she didn't see him. He usually had to shout to her to get her to notice he was there. Every time they met, the conversation began the same way. "Hello, Brian. Hello, Nell. How are you?" Then they both laughed. Brian found Nell easy to talk to. He told her about how dull he had found life and how he wanted to know about colours and having adventures. Nell understood. "I'd just like to see better," she told him. "I don't know about having adventures, though. What would be the point if I couldn't see what was going on?" "I could describe things to you," Brian replied. For some reason, Nell found this hilarious. "Oh, I can imagine," she laughed. "There's this thing over there, and it's really dull," she said, doing an impression of a gruff, grumpy badger. "There's a really boring tree over there." "I wouldn't," Brian protested. "I'd do it properly." But he knew Nell was only joking. She seemed to quite enjoy teasing him, and for reasons he couldn't quite explain, he found he enjoyed it too, although he pretended not to. Squish, Whitetip and Colin noticed that they were seeing less of Brian than they used to. "They must be keeping you really busy digging," Squish remarked one day. "You're never around these days." Brian didn't really know how to reply, but Whitetip gently coaxed it out of him. "There's this badger," he said, looking at the ground instead of at his friends. "Her name's Nell. But she's just a friend." "Woo!" Colin called out. "Brian's got a girlfriend." "There's nothing wrong with that," Whitetip told him, looking at Squish, who suddenly found something interesting to look at in the trees. "Are you going to settle down?" Colin carried on. "Are you going to get a little set of your own? And ow!" The young fox stopped short and sat rubbing his head. "When you dig as well as badgers, it's amazing what you can do with a well-aimed clod of soil." "She's just a friend," Brian repeated. "Why don't you come and meet her?" Luckily, Brian thought, Colin had somewhere else to be. But Squish and Whitetip accompanied him to the set where Nell and some of the others were bringing out that day's bedding. "Nell!" he called out, and his friend was so startled that she dropped the bedding she was carrying. "Hello, Brian," she said, coming over. "Hello, Nell," Brian replied. "How are you?" "He's very polite to her," Whitetip whispered. "I know," Squish whispered back. "But why do they find it so funny?" "I don't know. It must be a badger thing." "Come and meet my friends," Brian was saying to Nell. "I know my eyesight's bad," Nell replied, "but I can't see anyone." "They're right there," Brian told her. "They're squirrels. This is Squish and this is Whitetip. And this," he said, feeling really proud, "is Nell." "Hello," Nell said to the two squirrels. You'll have to forgive me if I can't tell you apart at first." "That's okay," Whitetip told her. "Brian can't either." Before long, Whitetip and Nell were chatting like old friends, leaving Brian and Squish feeling a little bit left out. Whitetip was just starting on another story about an annoying thing Squish had done, when they were interrupted by rustling in the undergrowth nearby. Earthface emerged, with soil clinging to his snout. He was clearly out of breath. "There you are, Brian," he panted. "I've been looking everywhere for you. You've got to come and see this." "What is it, Dad?" Brian asked. "Has something happened?" It's hard to explain. You really need to see it. Come on, bring your friends if you want." With that, Earthface turned round and started back through the undergrowth. Brian and his friends looked at each other and, without a word, followed. Earthface led them to the entrance to the tunnel system the badgers were currently digging. "We dug through a wall and found an old tunnel behind it. We didn't know it was there, and we don't know when it was dug. But that isn't all we found. I've never seen anything like this." He stopped and looked at Squish and Whitetip. "How's your seeing in the dark?" he asked. "Well, not bad," Squish replied. "Not as good as yours, but probably better than mine," Nell added. "Well, come and see anyway." The older badger shuffled off into the tunnel with Brian and the squirrels following. Nell stayed very close to Brian. They went down several passages, each one darker than the last, until they came to a hole in the wall. From the other side of the hole they could hear a group of older badgers talking. "Must have been there a long time," one voice, which Brian recognised as Roger, was saying. "Well, yes, but who did it?" another voice asked. Well, look at that bit there, Roger said. It looks like the letter B. Wasn't you, was it, Bryn? Have you any idea how many badgers' names start with B? Bryn asked. Brian and his friends went through the hole in the wall to where the older badgers were talking and stopped in their tracks as they saw what had caused all the fuss. What is it, Brian? Nell asked. Brian described what he saw even though he could hardly believe it. The wall of the tunnel had been scraped smooth and flat. On this surface, someone, apparently a badger, had carefully drawn a picture. The picture was crude, but Brian could easily recognise that it was a drawing of a badger. The badger was sitting down looking up at the sky. In the sky, the artist had drawn a series of lines which all curved upwards and away from the watching badger. What does it mean? Brian asked his father. I don't know, Earthface replied. There's never been anything like this as far as I know. I've seen lots of tunnels, but I've never found anything like this. At that moment there was a loud creaking noise from above their heads, and Brian felt a trickle of soil fall onto his back. I know what that means, the badger called Bryn said. Did you secure the tunnel? Earthface asked. Well, we didn't have time, Roger told him. We were going to, and we found that. In that case, Earthface said grimly, everyone out. Now! Earthface and the two older badgers immediately headed off back up to the tunnels. Brian hurried to keep up. Squish and Whitetip scampered along beside him. As they drew near the entrance to the tunnel, Brian suddenly realised to his horror that there was someone missing. Nell! He shouted. Where's Nell? He turned to go back to the tunnels, but his father stood in his way. You can't get back in there, son, he said. That whole lock could come down. I can't leave her, Brian said firmly. I've got to go back. Before his father could stop him, he hurried off into the tunnels. Don't worry, we'll help him, Squish told Earthface, and, taking Whitetip by the paw, he too shot off into the tunnels. Earthface was about to go after them, but Roger stopped him. No, Earthface, he said. We might need you to dig from this side. But he's my son, Earthface protested. Then let's hope he digs as well as you do, Roger told him. With that, there was a tremendous noise from inside the tunnels. The older badgers could only watch helplessly as the bank into which they had spent days digging slowly collapsed in on itself, until with a final ear-splitting crash, the entrance to the soil disappeared altogether. When the soil and dust settled, there was no sign there had been a tunnel at all. Chapter 6, in which we find out what's on the other side. When the soil and dust settled, there was no sign there had been a tunnel at all. That's not good, Brian remarked, surveying the pile of earth, rocks and roots where the hole leading into the tunnel once had been. You came back? A voice said nearby. Yes, Nell, Brian replied. I came back, and now we're all stuck here. Can't you dig through? Squish asked, hopping onto the pile of earth for a better look. We can help, obviously, but you're much better at it. You don't know tunnels, Brian told him. Not like badgers know them. When a tunnel goes like that, you just get out, you don't keep digging. That pile you're sitting on may be all that's holding the roof up. Squish very quickly jumped off the pile. So we follow this tunnel and see where it goes, Whitetip suggests. Well, we can try, Brian said. It might go somewhere. It might go nowhere. That's the trouble with these old tunnels. We need to find out, Squish said. We can't just stay down here. You'll have to lead the way, Brian, Whitetip announced. You can see best. Brian looked down the tunnel left and right. Both directions seemed to lead into the dark. Right, Brian said. We came to the hole from that direction, he nodded to the right, and that's the way Dad and Roger were digging, so we need to go this way, he nodded to the left. How can you tell that? Squish asked. You need a good sense of direction down here, Brian told him. Badgers are the best. Brian glanced down the tunnel to the left again, just to make sure. Come on, he said, let's go. Just as he was about to lead them off, he realised that Nell had barely spoken since the tunnel collapse. Are you okay, Nell? He asked. This is my fault, she said. When you all ran out, I didn't know which way to go. If you hadn't had to come back, we wouldn't be stuck down here. I know, Brian grinned, and we wouldn't be about to go off on an adventure. Now come on, stick with me and let's see where this tunnel goes. Brian led off with Nell by his side and the two squirrels following behind. His eyes were adjusting more and more to the pitch darkness of the tunnel, but he wished he felt as confident as he sounded. This tunnel could lead them to safety, or it could just lead to a dead end. Both ends of the tunnel could be blocked off, and then they would be faced with a very grim choice. Dig and risk another cave-in, or the ore didn't really bear thinking about. But Brian knew that the others were relying on him. The squirrels couldn't dig their way out if they needed to, and Nell, well, it was just nice to have Nell by his side. The tunnel seemed to stretch a long way. Ahead, all Brian could see was tunnel. It was a good tunnel too. A badger or badgers had definitely dug it. Rabbit tunnels were smaller, and the tunnels dug by shrews just looked like holes in the ground. Hardly tunnels at all. But badger tunnels were proper tunnels, and this was a well-dug one and clearly made to last. There was something about it though which made Brian curious. "Nell," he said as they walked along, "do you notice something about this tunnel?" "It's very long," Nell replied, and there aren't any chambers, are there? You would have said." "Exactly," Brian said, "no chambers. Why would that be?" "I don't understand," Squish said behind him. "What does that mean?" "Badgers build tunnels for one reason," Brian told him. "To live in," Nell joined in. "We dig tunnels and make rooms off the tunnels to live in." "This tunnel has no rooms," Brian went on. "Then that means," White Tip added. "That means it's been dug to go somewhere," Brian finished. "So let's get going and find out where." On they went, and so did the tunnel. Brian could tell by the fact that the air was getting slightly colder that they were going further under the ground. The tunnel mostly went in a straight line, but occasionally there was a bend where a particularly obstinate root was in the way. It was as they went round one of these bends that Brian saw something that made him stop dead. "Look at that," he whispered. "What is it?" Nell asked. "It's another picture." Sure enough, cut into the wall was another drawing. "It's by the same badger," Brian said. "Look, he signed it with a B." Nell squinted at the wall, but all she could make out were vague lines. "Tell me," she said, standing so close to Brian that he could feel the warmth through the fur. Well, he stammered. It's a picture of a badger. He's digging. That's all it is, a digging badger." "Well, there must be more to it than that," Squish said, trying hard to look as if he could see it properly. "Which way?" Nell asked. "Which way what?" Brian was confused. "Which way is he digging?" Brian looked at the picture again, then back at Nell. He frowned for a moment, then understood. "I see what you mean. Yes, he's facing the way we're going. It's a sign. Whoever it is has left us a sign to say which way he planned to go." "How did he know we were coming?" Squish asked. "Oh, Squish," White Tip scolded. "Not us. Whoever found this tunnel." "But why?" Nell asked. "Why would he do that?" "Well, we need to find the tunnel to find out," Brian said. They were just about to move off again when Brian suddenly noticed that the wall of the tunnel next to the picture seemed to be moving. There was a distinct scratching noise, and all of a sudden a pair of long clawed paws emerged through the wall. They were quickly followed by a black velvet face with a very pink nose on the end of it. "Oh, sorry," the mole said. "Is this your tunnel?" The face then disappeared back the way it came. "Hang on," Brian called out. "Come back." The face reappeared. "Didn't want to intrude, mate," the mole said. "Didn't know there was anyone here till I heard your voices." "Did you know this tunnel was here?" Brian asked. "Well, yeah, we knew it was there," the mole told him. "It's been there ages, but we didn't know it belonged to anyone." "It doesn't really," Nell said. "Not to us, anyway. We're just trying to find out where it goes." "Oh, well, that's easy," the mole replied. "It goes that way." He waved a paw to the left. "And it goes that way." He waved a paw to the right. "Thanks," Brian said, trying not to sound too sarcastic. "No problem," the mole replied, apparently not noticing. "Have you seen any other badgers down here?" Nell asked. "Well, not that I know of," the mole said. "Saw a shrew once, but he was going the other way. No badgers, though." Then he suddenly sniffed. He frowned and took another long sniff. "That's weird," he said. "Smells like squirrels. Sort of nutty smell. It can't be. You don't get squirrels underground." "What do you do today?" Squish said. "Hello." "Weird," the mole said. "Anyway, good luck. If you come back this way, let me know where it goes." "We will," Brian said. The mole vanished back through the wall. That, Brian said, was a big help. On they went, following the tunnel. They walked mostly in silence for what seemed like ages. There were still no chambers built off the tunnel, and they saw no more pictures. Then, two things happened. Firstly, Brian felt that the air was not quite as cold, which, with luck, might mean they were heading upwards. It was only a slight change and not enough to remark upon. But the second thing that made him stop and stare, it was only a tiny pinprick, and it was a long way ahead, but it was there. "Look," he said in a hushed whisper. "Look. That's light." Come back tomorrow for the next part of A Black and White Tale. Thank you for listening.